Hi guys, welcome to a very special video because today I'm going to talk to you about all the books I read within 365 days. Now, you might be wondering, the end of the year isn't even close. How is this girl going to talk about what she read within a year? Well, here's the thing. Tomorrow is my birthday, and that's how I tracked my books over the last year. I did not start on New Year's Eve or like on the 1st of January, but I started tomorrow last year because I think I got myself this Amanda Rachley dotted bullet journal, and since it was only October, I could not yet start actually like designing my bullet journal. But so I designed a few pages at the beginning, which I just doodled some stuff here and there, including this beautiful double page that has on the one hand side books I read this year, and then on the other hand movies I've watched. That's actually on this page I noted down all the series I watched, not the movies. And because this page was not enough, I have a second and then like a fourth of a new one, of like a third one, chronicling all the books I read within this year. Now let's talk about the stats. I read 99 books this year. Yes, 99. How is that even possible? I even like, should I start a new book today so I can make it 100? But no, that's fine. Plus, I'm still reading 2 of those 99 books, so I still have to finish them. So I want to start like a 100th one. But how crazy is that? 99 books. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to read to you all the titles. I do not have the authors' names written down as well. So, I mean, am I going to write all of these books down at the description box? I don't know yet, because like 99, that's quite a bit, you know? So maybe just listen up if you want to hear the title of one of them again, I guess. And then after I read to you all the titles, we're going to go into a bit more detail. So here we go. In the past year, I read Women in White, Ocho Casas de Poirot, Anne of the Island, Circe, Cita con la Muerte, A Question of Holmes, Emma, Song of Achilles, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, Amber in the Ashes, Murder in Mesopotamia, The Alchemist, Young Man in Spats, The Devil in the Dark Water, Little Women, Almond, Mangle Street Murder, One of Us is Lying, The Sonnets by Shakespeare, The Inheritance Game, Missing Treasure, And Then There Were None, Anne of Green Gables, Eddie LaRue, Woven in Moonlight, Hound of Basketballs, Los 13 Problemas, ABC Murders, Haus des Schreckens, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, Cianuro Espumoso, The Big Sleep, Written in Starlight, Devil in the Blue Dress, Murder on the Orient Express, Mistletoe and Murder, Miss Marple's Final Cases, Kim Ji-young, born 1982, Death Set Sail. That's all I have written down on like the first books I've read page. Now heading over to the second one. That's this one right here. Muerte en el Vicaria, Thursday Murder Club, Beautiful World, Where Are You, Anxious People, Hamlet, The Fire, As You Like It, Sangre en la Piscina, Muerte bajo el sol, La venganza de Nofret, The Moonstone, The Man Who Died Twice, The Hill We Climb, Cianucia, Un Asesinato, Normal People, A Midsummer Night's Dream, If I Had Your Face, The Maidens, Hamnet, Nancy Drew's Larkspur Lane, Crying in H-Mart, Human Acts, The Vanishing Half, La Mano Negra, The Decagon House Murders, Macbeth, The Secret Garden, Cumbres Borrascosos, Romeo and Juliet, Maria Stuart, The Wisteria Society, Please Look After Mom, Don't Point That Thing at Me, Ghost, The Law and the Lady, La Vraie Vie de Agatha Christie, Northanger Abbey, Richard III, Las Doncellas, Muerte en el Nilo, The Curious Incident of the Dog at Nighttime, Walden, Number 1 Detective Agency, The Interpreter, Wuthering Heights, Serious Concerns, Ninth House, If We Were Villains, Olive, Clara and the Sun, Excavation, Queen's Gambit, Exciting Times, Armadale, Das Prachtboot, and then moving on to the third page, which I only recently started. As you can see, I only have like the first column, not even full yet. The Hunden Murders, Piranesi, The Inugamikas, The Silent Patient, and Once Upon a Crime. Whew. So guys, those were all the 99 books I read this year. Now let's talk about genres. Now I have all my stats right here, and I am not surprised at all, and you shouldn't be either if you've watched a few of my videos, that 41 of these books were murder mysteries. Now, that is not surprising because I am a murder mystery lover. I talk about it in all of my videos, basically, so that makes sense. Then the second biggest category are actually classics. 25 classics I read, 8 of which were plays, theater plays. 6 of those were by Shakespeare because I took a Shakespeare class last semester, so I read a lot of the plays for uni. One of them was Maria Stuart by Schiller, and then I also counted the sonnets by Shakespeare into that classics category, of course. But like a few of the books that I counted as classics are per se also murder mysteries. For example, the Wilkie Collins books, but I just counted them as classics and not murder mysteries. But for example, the Agatha Christie books, I counted as murder mysteries, not classics, even though of course Agatha Christie, the icon, those are also classics, but I kind of had to decide where I want to put which author or like which books. Then this is actually quite a big surprise for me, but I read 8 fantasy novels. And that's a surprise because I don't really like fantasy. So I don't know, how did I read 8 fantasy novels? But, well, I suppose I did. I read 16 like contemporary novels. I put like a lot of those books into that kind of vague category, such as, I know, of course, like Sally Rooney, Nisha Dolan, Emma Gannon. For example, it's like If I Had Your Face, Anxious People, those kind of books I put into that kind of vague contemporary novel category because I didn't want to segment them into like smaller categories. Then I read 2 adventure novels. There was like Excavation. What was the other one? Oh yeah, The Fire. Those ones that have like strong Dan Brown vibes, I counted as adventure novels. I don't know. Then I read 2 pieces of poetry. Oh, like I could have of course counted Shakespeare's The Sonnets as a piece of poetry because it is poetry. So I guess 3 pieces of poetry: The Hill We Climb, A Serious Concerns by Wendy Cope, and Shakespeare's The Sonnets. I read 2 historic novels. I called them historic novels because they very much try to conjure up the air of like an actual classic. There was Hamnet, which is about Shakespeare's family, so it is a historic novel like that. And like another book that wanted to sound like, or it wanted to be read like a Jane Austen novel without being a Jane Austen novel, but that's why I put it in that historic novel category. Then I read 1 comic book. We actually can see it right here. That's the one, oh wait, that's the next category I want to talk about, but yeah, 1 comic book right there and 1 textbook. Now, the next category I want to talk about is like the languages I read these books in. Now, the vast majority of them, 85 of them I read in English, 13 I read in Spanish, 2 in German, and 1 in French. And that was actually the comic book, which was quite a struggle because my French is, well, not good. So actually I cannot read books in French, not at all. But because this had, of course, these pretty pictures, it helped me understand what was going on. But yeah, actually I should not try to read another book in French unless I take some classes. But yeah, with the comic book, it kind of ended up working out. And now just like a few recommendations or like things I learned, things I can recommend to you having read all of those 99 books. For example, my favorite books out of all of these, there are like a few categories I would say. Like, as I said, murder mysteries, they're simply my favorite. So yes, all of my favorite out of these were murder mysteries. First of all, we have the Japanese mysteries that I recently read, and I definitely want to do like a separate video on them. Those are like, you see them right up there, the Honjin Murders and the Inugami Curse. I really, really love those. I also love the Decadent House Murders, which is also written by a Japanese author. So those I loved. I also loved the Thursday Murder Club series, like the first and the second part by Richard Osman. And what also really stuck with me was If We Were Villains, a quintessential Dark Academia book, which I really loved. Now, maybe even more interesting, what were my least favorite books out of all of these? Ooh, my contact lens. So the first one, I really did not enjoy Anne of the Island, which is the 3rd part in the Anne of Green Gables series. I really liked the first part. I didn't read the second or like any of the other parts, but I read the 3rd part because that's about Anne going to university. And I picked this up when I didn't start university, but I was in university and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pick up the 3rd one because she's in university. It's gonna be relatable and all. I don't even know what I wanted basically, but the 3rd book, I found it to be so boring. I think out of all of these books, it took me the longest time to finish that one because within, like, I started it, but then I had to lay it down for like a couple of weeks, if not even months, because I could not bring myself to continue reading it. But because I didn't want to not finish it, I ended up finishing it like a couple of weeks or months later, but it was really, really boring. So I can not really recommend it, I guess. I also did not enjoy On Earth You're Briefly Gorgeous. I talked about that a bit in a recent video of mine. In my unpopular opinions of the booktube community. So if you want to hear a bit more about why I didn't like it, check out that video. I also didn't enjoy The Mango Street Murders, which that tried to conjure up a kind of like Sherlock Holmes vibe, and it kind of did, but it was way too brutal. I did not like all the violence in that novel, so I didn't really enjoy it. But again, I don't like not finishing books, so I read it, so I ended up reading it anyway, but did not like that either. And I also didn't like Ninth House. I talk about that in my reading my favorite booktubers book recommendations video. I read this for the book Leonie, and this is like a adult fantasy novel, but it's also quite brutal and gory, and that's not my style, so that's why I also didn't particularly enjoy that book. Actually, I did not like it. Okay, moving on to the biggest surprise. The biggest surprise is a book I only read last week, and that was Piranesi. That's actually also a book I read because Leonie of the book Leo recommended it, so she definitely made up for the Ninth House. Girl, you're fine. Piranesi, I don't even, like, I'm going to talk about it in my upcoming reading wrap-up of October, but it was the biggest surprise out of all of these because I have never read a book like that before, in the sense that I went into this book not knowing anything about it, basically. And so it was like really fascinating to read a book where I had no idea in which direction it would go, because I didn't even know the genre of the book. So I really had no idea how this book would develop. So that was pretty exciting to read a book like that. Okay, then the most sad, the most depressing book. This is kind of like a weird category, but I thought I would throw this in here. The most depressing book, or like the most sad, was definitely Human Acts by Hangang. Yes, that's right. This book, it was for sure the toughest one to read. I read this for my 7 Korean books video, in which I read 7 books written by Korean or Korean American authors. And yeah, it is really, really, really tough and cruel. It's a very cruel, or like it talks about cruelty and the war and grief, and yeah, it was tough. I felt really depressed after finishing that. That's not to say it's a bad book, of course not, but it left me feeling pretty sad. Okay, now to lighten up the mood again, the funniest book I read. I struggled with finding a book to place this category in, because most of the books I read, they're not like laugh out loud funny. Because most of the books I read are like murder mysteries, and they are like intriguing or like interesting, or like, I don't even know, but usually they're not funny books, you know? So the only book I can really place in this category, I think, are the P.G. Wodehouse novels. I think I only read 1 P.G. Wodehouse this year, which, wow, is quite, like, it's not a lot. There was The Young Man in Spats, and like the Don't Point That Thing at Me, that's not by P.G. Wodehouse, but it reads like a P.G. Wodehouse novel. It's by Kirill Banfiglioli, I think. Those two were funny. Those two had like laugh out loud funny moments in them. But then again, it's kind of like in not old sense of humor, but those books were like written in the 1920s, 30s, so I guess not everybody's cup of tea, but I personally think that P.G. Wodehouse is really funny. But maybe you don't. But those were like the funniest books I read this year. The most shocking turns. Which books had the most shocking turns? Now, the 2 books I put in this category were, first of all, Anxious People. And that is quite surprising, because Anxious People, that's not a thriller. It's not like a murder mystery. And I read so many murder mysteries, you would assume that the books I name are out of that category. But I found Anxious People to have some of the best turns, which is kind of hard to describe. I put Anxious People in the contemporary novel category, and I kind of struggle to explain what it's about. It's about people being held hostage in an apartment which they visited at like an apartment viewing, you know, when an apartment is for sale, and then like a a robber comes in and holds them hostage. And then the story develops out of that situation, which you might, like, me describing it like that might be really misleading. But yeah, I think Anxious People had some of the best turns and most unexpected turns out of all of the books I read this year. Plus, I really also liked the big revelation at the end of Decagon House Murders. That one, it was quite ingenious. I also really liked it, but obviously I can talk about it right here because maybe you have not read it yet. Okay, another kind of weird category maybe, but the books I read this year that conveyed the most wisdom, I would say are, first of all, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. This is like a kind of parable story that you could read when you're feeling maybe kind of lost as like a young person and you don't know what you want to do with your life. I think it could be helpful if you're in that kind of situation. I really enjoyed reading it. It felt very, very wholesome to read, I guess. Sorry, I'm not doing a good job describing these. And another book which also contained a lot of wisdom, oh yeah, and I also laughed out loud a couple of times while I was reading it, was Walden. I have it here somewhere, by Henry Thoreau. He has a double last name. I cannot think about it right now. I'm gonna put it here somewhere. That also had like a couple of really good pieces of wisdom in it, should you be looking for a read like that. And now, last but not least, the books that I would personally want you to read after having read all these 99 books. Like, of course, they're like my personal favorites that I could recommend to you, but of course I'm really biased with those because I love murder mystery, so, but maybe you don't. So I'm gonna recommend you two more other than those favorite books I named a couple of minutes ago. And that's, first of all, Kim Ji-young, right here, born 1982. When I read that, I really felt like this is a book that everybody should read. No matter which gender you personally identify with, no matter what your personal living reality maybe would look like, I think you can learn something from this book. Learn something, or like, this book can give you solace. If you're experiencing stuff like that as well, it can give you solace in the sense that you're not alone in all of this. And if you haven't experienced any of the things that are going on in Kim Ji-young, for example, if you're like a heteronormative man, I would assume you cannot personally relate to stuff that's happening in this book, but it could help you understand the perspective of a lot of women, for example, out there. So yeah, I could really recommend anyone and everyone to read Kim Ji-young. As I said, I also found Piranesi to be such a surprising read because it was so unexpected in every way, shape, or form. So if you want to have that experience, to head into a book knowing nothing about it, not knowing in which direction it's gonna head, pick up Piranesi. With this, I headed into it not knowing a single thing, and I kind of loved that experience, so I can also recommend that to you. So these are all the books I read within the last 365 days, most of which are standing behind me right now. I am looking forward to reading all the good books in the next year of my life, and I thank you so much for watching. I'm going to see you in the next video. Bye!